Hey everyone, welcome to Questions on Tap, where we drink whiskey and talk about, well, just about anything. I'm John.
And I'm Mark. And on this episode of Questions on Tap, I believe we're jumping into the Joker's proposition.
Yes, so for anyone who has seen The Dark Knight, which if you haven't, you are missing the greatest piece of cinema ever, and you should go immediately watch it. Well, outside of The Prestige. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. But the point is that the Joker gave this proposition in the movie. There are two boats. One of the boats had all of the normal rule and law-following citizens on one boat, and the criminals on another boat, and put them out into the water on the lake. He then gives each boat a detonator to the other boat's bombs. And he told both boats, if the citizens of Gotham pull the trigger on the criminals, they will live. If the criminals pull the trigger on the citizens, the criminals will live. If neither of them decides to do anything, by 12 a.m., the Joker will blow them both up. And so there's some really interesting philosophical questions on here. How do you know which life is worth saving, if any? Is life ever worth saving? And would you kill someone else to preserve your own life? And is either boat more worthy than the other? So that's a lot of questions. Let's dive right in. Mark, what would you do?
Yeah, I think I love this because there's so many different questions kind of as you phrased it. And also when I first watched Dark Knight, I agree, it's an amazing movie. I don't think I thought about really the philosophical implications. I was more like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And trying to jump back into it, picture the situation is interesting. If I was in that situation, if I'm in the situation, can I jump off the boat?
No. I think.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a rule against that.
Something. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure if somebody did, he'd blow up both boats. So yeah, I think it actually ties in. I want to stay consistent across the episodes, and I think that my philosophy right now, and how I'm looking about it, is, well, I'm trying to we'll see. I think life should be preserved when possible. Because some people being alive has more potential than no people being alive. And I've stated that before in past episodes. I think I said that in the trolley problem. I think I said that in the merchant vessel problem. And staying consistent with that, I do think it is better if one of the boats pull the trigger.
Okay. Which boat?
I think is a different discussion that we're going to jump into. But before I do, John, what are your thoughts? I kind of want to know, just so I know how I'm talking to you about it.
Neither boat should pull the trigger.
And everybody should die.
Again, it comes down to the action at hand. We've talked a lot about morality.
We have.
And we're talking about what is the right thing to do in this situation. And
yeah.
I believe it was in one of our last few episodes when we were talking about objective morality. We got into talking about God and religion and all that. And we talked about, is it possible for a bad action to have good how do you measure what's a moral action?
Yeah.
And I believe, also trying to stay consistent with myself, I believe I said that a purely good action not only has external benefits, but internal benefits.
Okay.
And I do not think that whoever has the trigger on either boat doing it has any positive internal action, has any positive internal benefits. And for me, that's the number one flag, that is not a moral action.
So do you think preserving your own life can have internal benefits?
Certainly it can have internal benefits.
Okay.
But in this one particular situation, I do not think that. I think it can have obviously external benefits, and maybe in a certain universe, if you were to modify this problem slightly, maybe I would be open to kind of let's say that maybe they should do it kind of thing. But given the proposition that the Joker gives, I do not think that there is a universe in which it is a moral action to pull the trigger, in a sense, which is where you get the whole Batman monologue at the end that this city just showed you it's full of people ready to believe in good. And I think that's the statement that is being made in the film. And I happen to agree with that statement.
Yeah, see, I think the people in the movie were probably believing that somebody would stop the Joker, right?
I mean, maybe, but I think that's pretty normal. If in any
Yeah, but like
situation,
let's say
if you're
in
a
in
really
like in
dire
an
situation-
isolated incident that like the Joker can't be stopped here, and like this is going to happen. People are going to die. Like this is kind of how I'm looking at it, that people are going to die. I think it is better for more people at the end of the day to be alive than to be dead. And I agree that I don't think the ends always justify the means. We talked about this again in a past episode. But I also think if you're not measuring an action, like I think the ends can sometimes be a good judge of kind of the action. And I think in this case, keeping people alive is a just conquest, I guess.
I think it is just to certainly want to keep people alive, obviously. But I do not think the way you're going about. I don't think there is a way to go about it in which the decision can be just. It's an understandable decision. You can take an understandable action that most certainly will have benefits that you wouldn't have otherwise. But overall, you cannot. For either vote, there's no way for that to internally be positive. And so to maintain consistency, it's not internally positive for the people making the decision to blow up the boat. It is internally positive.
What do you mean by internally positive?
Does it align your soul, your psyche, whatever you want to call it? Does it align it with the good? Is it aligned with
the good being God?
In my situation, but maybe it's not for others.
Well, no, but that's how you're looking at this problem. So
that's how I'm looking at it. But even from a secular perspective, like, is your act... Again, since like I've stated, I believe in objective morality, and I think we both agree that there is some level of objective morality. We might disagree on the spectrum of that, but like we agree on the broad concept.
Or why it exists, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but if you think about it, you want to align yourself up with the good, that like ethereal concept, which I don't want to make it sound too academic. Like for me, that's God. For other people, maybe it's something else, or a different God, or a different law, or something like that. But however you want to define that, you want to. The internal benefit is: are you lining up with that? Are you furthering that, in a sense?
So in this case, the good, like, from what it sounds like, you're saying that God would want all of those people to die.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, but in this situation, that's how do you align yourself with the good, by letting everyone die.
I am saying that for the people on the boat, because we're talking about what is the moral action for the people on the boat.
Yes.
I am saying that none of the options have a good external result, in a sense. There are less bad results, in some sense. But when you're looking at a situation like this, and you're trying to measure what's a moral decision, what's a moral choice, when the external results are complex and sometimes misleading, like we've talked about, you must look at the internal ones. And internally, I do not think God, or the good, for whatever you want to talk about, but God would see it as a good thing that someone decided to pull the trigger.
What do you think it's a good thing that more humans are alive to spread a good message?
Of course, I think God would like more people to be there alive and be able to keep living life. Like, I don't think death in itself is ever a good thing necessarily. But I also come from a tradition of martyrs and a tradition of people that are willing to like not fight and lay down their life for stuff, for the good, to line yourself up with the good. Now I encourage everyone to read a book called Silence by Shusaku Endo, which kind of talks about, is it ever okay to not do that? I think it's a bit ambiguous, but it definitely leaves room to say maybe there is a time to kind of break that tradition, in a sense. But either way, it just is a general rule of thumb. Maybe there are exceptions. It's certainly understandable. But if you're asking me for the pure answer, the pure best thing to do is to not pull the trigger.
To let everyone die.
To both boats to not do it. From the
So
perspective
everyone
of the
dies.
people on the boat, yes.
Okay. I think this is so much reminding me of the merchant vessel problem. In terms of how it's very similar in terms of, is it ever okay to like kill another human? I guess this is kind of what we're talking about, really.
Well, yeah, and it's also like, do the citizens, as opposed to which the prisoners are citizens too, but I don't know what other terms to use. The prisoners and the non-prisoners.
Yeah.
It opens up the discussion of it, which is why, like, leading into my point, I don't think there's one group that is more worthy of living than the other. And so,
No, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but if that's the case, then it's not morally good to pull the trigger because no one is more worthy of it.
But some people, I like the whole worthy. I get from a theological perspective, but even from like a secular perspective, human life is a human life. Outside of like the worthy, because I feel like using the term worthy to me kind of brings in the idea of a deity. I still think
value, then they're all of equal value.
Yeah, of equal potential of value. Yeah, I don't think one group has the right or the moral high ground to pull the trigger, but I don't think it is wrong for somebody to pull the trigger. Because as I've said, it's just like it increases the capacity for good in the world by having more people alive.
I think that's a rationalization of a bad thing, saying that because it has external benefits, you can rationalize the bad action because it has good repercussions.
And I feel like you're ignoring all the good things that can come out of a bad action. Or
I'm not ignoring it. But the question, I'm more acknowledging that the way I look at when measuring morality is not just that. Like, that's certainly an aspect of it, but it's perhaps not the most important one. It's an important one, but it's not the top one.
Yeah, I get. Like, I know. I hear you. I hear you saying that you're listening to it, or that you're factoring in the external results. But it keeps going back for you to the internal of what's it doing to their soul, as we talked about. I think it was episode 8, objective morality, or 9, maybe. Like, that's what it seems like it keeps tying back to, that the external factors don't matter. That, like, in this case, if it's like both boats have 500 people, like, you're okay ignoring the external factors that 500 more people are alive on this earth. That could bring about, as we've talked about, every person has pretty much infinite potential. Or infinite potential. That you're okay losing infinite potential.
I think I don't want to conflate my moral assertion with being okay with it. I'm not okay with this situation. That's not like this is a good situation, and I'm certainly not arguing that the external result of 1,000, however many people are on each boat, we'll say 1,000 just to make it nice.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's what I was trying to
boat. Yeah, no, I agree. So I'm not somehow saying that that's a good result, but my point that I made a few episodes ago, and the one that I'm making now, is that external results are unreliable sometimes. In fact, a lot of times.
Do they ever factor in?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I'm going to be searching for a time when the external results outdo the internal results, because I don't think we found one yet.
Well, what do you... So, it's kind of weird. It's one of those things where... How do I articulate this? A purely good moral action has both. A purely good moral action always has the internal, and ideally has the external, but not always. Because we live in an imperfect world. An imperfect universe. I think it's more that I just find the internal result more objective, in a sense. Like, what is it?
I feel like the internal result is the least objective.
See, and I disagree. I mean, like, for the person at hand,
Yeah.
trying to I think the external one, it's more based in emotions. It's more based in
Wait,
how does that make you feel, like losing 500, losing 1,000
isn't that
souls
isn't that
compared
the
to
internal?
500. The internal is a matter of, is the decision I'm making aligning me with the good? Is that
Isn't that an
decision
emotion?
making me no, it's not an emotion. There are
Well, like
people
you
who
just
have
said, is
emotions for
it
that.
like you're asking yourself that question?
Not everything's an emotion. Like meaning that, like, if I ask myself, so let me break this. Let's break this down.
Let's do it.
Internal,
Let's do it.
external. Internally, you are asking yourself, is the decision to what to do with the trigger, is that aligning me with the good? Is it making me a moral person? Am I aligning, following following morality? Am I doing the moral thing? Am I a more moral person because of this decision, or have I become less of one, in a sense? Which I think the criticism of this, which I acknowledge, is, are you not making a decision for personal piousness? In a sense, like, are you just being self-righteous in doing that? I think that's fair, and I'm happy to get into that. But that's the internal measure. The external measure is, does what I'm doing help people? And so to kind of throw back at you with the
Yeah, please.
so I mean, like, the external result at best, perhaps, yeah, you have 500 people of infinite value, but you just killed 500 people of infinite value, so you break even at best.
Well, but we've both talked about the fact that one person's life versus 500 lives, it's the same because infinite is infinite. So you divide infinity by 2. No, but if we're talking about
No, I agree.
it's still infinite.
I know. I agree.
I can see him. John's rolling his eyes right now. That was hilarious.
I think that we're comparing apples to oranges in this one, where before we're talking about, do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, kind of thing. And that was my point in that statement. The context of that point is important. In this context, this is not a question of do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or and we both agree that neither boat has more of a moral right to live than the other boat. And so if that's the case, then what do you use to measure this?
To measure what?
To measure the moral. If neither boat has more of a moral right to live, then it cannot really be a moral decision to pull the trigger, in a sense.
Why?
Because it's just self-preservation. To the person pulling the trigger, it is self-preservation.
Isn't not pulling the trigger because you think you're going to be more worthy self-preservation in a way too?
I wouldn't look at it that, because you're not, if it's anti-self-preservation, it's, in a sense,
well, but
it is. You're doing it, what is going to show love in this situation? What is the loving act? The loving act is to not pull the trigger. There is no greater love than this, than to lay down your life for one's friend. And in this case, both boats doing that is showing a greater love, and which you can make the argument actually is a greater sense and symbol of unity, morality, and inspiration for the world. Whereas whichever boat decides to pull the trigger, yes, you have more people in the world, but at what cost, in a sense? What have you lost? Like, I don't think that's like just a net gain. You have.
Oh no, there's definitely some like. Yeah, no, it's definitely not.
I don't even
pure gain.
No, I know, but I don't even mean for people that would die because of that. I mean, but for people who are left living.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I
mean, yeah, 500 people just died. I mean, that's a terrible.
And you're responsible for it, in a sense.
One person is, yeah. I would almost say that one person who pulls the trigger is taking away pain from the other 499 from having to do that act. That it's not self-preservation. You're putting yourself into doing an act that seemingly is bad so other people don't have to, so people can live.
And the choice that you're making is that you have the right to kill the other people to do that.
The choice you're making is to preserve human life.
The choice that you're
I
making is
I
to take human life. That is what.
yes, you're taking and you're preserving. And by not deciding anything, you are making a choice to take more human life. We've talked about indecision, and that I think indecision is the same thing.
Yeah, I would fundamentally disagree that by not.
I know, which is
you're making a choice for, because you aren't making the choice for both of them to blow up at 12 a.m. You did not.
You
make
are
that
though.
choice. That choice was made for you.
You have power to stop that choice, though.
At what cost? What are you sacrificing to do that? And the
500 people.
I think that the real big definition is I am not comfortable with the sacrifice of 500 people out of the name of preservation.
I have so many follow-up questions after this. This is really fascinating.
At least in this situation. Like, I can't really think of many. You might be able to come up with another one that maybe I would be a bit more flexible on. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at least in this case, I would say that, again, with that internal measurement, because that's really all we have that I would say is objective in this moment.
Can I just say something with that really quick though?
Yeah, sure.
The internal measurement. We've talked about this before, or like not exactly, but that internal measurement that you're using is God, right?
What do you mean by
that you were using? You're trying to align yourself with the good, right?
Which in my case, yes. I mean, everyone, even when you're talking about preserving human life for infinite, we're all relying on some kind of fabric that says this. Meaning that, like, for you believe that infinite potential of the 500 is, that moral statement you're making is aligning yourself with something. Like, it's not just a gut reaction. Like, we've both thought about this. It is we're trying to decide what is the moral action. So yeah, for when you ask me, like, are you just doing this because of God? I mean, in a sense, like, God for me is the moral authority. I would argue for everyone, but like in my belief system, God is the moral authority. But I think you can argue this from a secular perspective too. I don't think it's like impossible to have this belief from a secular perspective.
No, it probably isn't. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that that's why I keep using the term "the good," because you can be an atheist and still believe that because you don't have the right to do it, and that all you're doing is taking life, from your perspective in that moment, it is a more moral action to not do anything because it is selfish. It could be described as selfish. Understandable.
Some people could think about it, that it is selfish. Yeah. So I guess my main question kind of about this that I'm still struggling with a little bit is, if the internal is the easiest, like, how can we know those internal consequences or those internal results?
Well, I guess one, I don't mean easiest. I just mean that sometimes they're the most objective way to look at it. It's a helpful tool and kind of finishing place, because the external ones, it's hard to know if that's truly the moral decision or if it just has good benefits. Because we discussed before.
Yeah, because I think we talked about the fact
any action can have good outcomes.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and even just the idea that, like, if there is an objective morality, like, I think we both agree that there is, like, having a God makes that, knowing that there is an objective morality, easier. So I think that does make sense. Like, the internal results can be, like, not necessarily known, but, like, can be known, but aren't necessarily known yet, is, I guess, how I'm going to choose to look at it, I think.
Yeah, and I think you also have to, like, think about it like this, that, like, when you're measuring internal benefits, there are different ways of looking at it. There's, if you're a utilitarian, maybe you only look at the external benefits. Like, that's totally, like, something that utilitarians can do, and, like, that's certainly a useful perspective. I think we would be remiss in our world to, like, completely disregard utilitarianism, even though I
agree.
Really don't like it. I really don't like utilitarianism, but
I feel like I probably don't hate it as much as you, but, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, but that's okay. It's still good. I give it the respect it deserves. But, like, looking at it from, like, a Kantian perspective, or even, like, an existential perspective, like, there are different measurements for the internal and different ways of philosophically looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in some ways, yeah, it does depend on your standard, for sure. But I guess talking in a general sense, are you doing something that is helping you become a better person in like the simplest terms? The simplest.
Yeah, okay. I like that. I like that phrasing better. Yeah.
Like, are you becoming a better person through this action? Are you becoming a more loving person through this action? Are you loving someone in this action?
Yeah.
And like, are you actually fully doing that? Because in a sense, like, you could say, yeah, I'm loving people. I'm loving the other 499 people on my boat.
Yeah. I was literally just about to say, yeah, I'm not loving myself, but I'm loving the 499 other people on my boat. Yeah.
But are you loving the other 500?
Well, no. But in letting everybody die, I'm hating 999. Actually, I'm hating all probably 1,000 at that point. Or maybe I'm loving myself, but not loving the other 999.
But again, it's that indecision versus decision. Are you causing it? No. No more than anyone else is on those boats. There is only one person who is responsible, and that is the Clown Prince of Crime himself.
I have a question that I think I want the next episode to be on. That I figured out, but I don't think we can really go anywhere else from here. I feel like similar to past episode, it's just I don't want to sound like I'm a terrible person, but I am more okay sacrificing human life to keep other human life alive, whereas it doesn't seem like that is a perspective you will take lightly.
It's the like, I'm certainly open to those conversations, but it's one of those things where like I have to be thoroughly convinced. Because that is a more utilitarian way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my inherent discomfort with that philosophy and my inherent dislike for it is something that means that I love hearing that side of things, but it's rarely one that I agree with. It's not impossible, but it's rare.
Okay.
And so I'm looking at things from a religious perspective or from a secular, more Kantian kind of perspective. Or you can even make my argument from an existential perspective as well. Existentialism school.
You could make mine too.
But it's interesting.
I love that. Yeah, you could make. I think you could make both of ours from most perspectives. I don't think you could necessarily make mine from a religious perspective. Yeah, actually, no. I think you could.
I'm trying to think. Depending on the religion and how you, even in Christianity, how do you interpret certain?
Yeah.
I think
I'm not trying to get into that. But
I don't want to get into that. I think it'd be very hard from a Christian perspective, but I can see other religions. I mean, that's with respect. I could see certain other belief systems looking from a more utilitarian perspective. That makes sense to me. I could see it. Yeah.
No, I agree. Well, yeah, I feel like this is a good time to cut it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just opened up a donation page if you really like this podcast and you want the sound even better.
Yeah, right. Help us get some better equipment,
Get some better equipment. Maybe we'll look into doing some video podcasts at some point, or if we get enough people listening, we're interested in maybe exploring some memberships and doing exclusive episodes. But we'll see. Yeah, any donation is greatly appreciated, but it is not expected. This will always be a free podcast. So,
heck yeah. We want to keep it going. We enjoy doing it at the end of the day. So,
and we are furthering our goal of increasing society's ability to have tough conversations.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to end it right on that.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Pour yourself a glass of whiskey. Drink responsibly.
Have a good one, everybody.
See ya.